Sir, that cashier already knows her. Mia Johnson's tiny voice was almost lost beneath the noise of shopping carts, checkout scanners, and the quiet conversations of wealthy customers moving through Valenti Market. But Adrian Valenti heard every word. A second earlier, he had been reaching for his wallet, expecting nothing more than another ordinary evening beside the woman he planned to marry. Then Victoria Laurent stopped smiling. She placed a hand on the counter and looked toward the cashier with a calm expression that seemed perfectly rehearsed. Adrian, I think there is a problem with this purchase, she said. Someone changed something inside the bag. The words were soft, but they carried across the checkout area. A few customers turned around. A man near the coffee display lifted his phone. The store manager immediately stepped forward, recognizing Victoria as one of their most important customers. Adrian noticed the attention shift toward him. The room had changed in less than 10 seconds. Nobody knew the truth yet, but everyone was already deciding who looked guilty. Then Mia pulled gently on the sleeve of Adrian's black suit. She was only 8 years old, standing beside her mother Elena, the woman who worked in Adrian's home. Mia was small, wearing an old purple backpack and holding her little notebook close to her chest. She was not supposed to be part of conversations like this. She was supposed to wait quietly while adults handled adult problems. But Mia was looking at something nobody else was watching. The cashier. The young woman behind the register had stopped scanning items. Her hands were still, her eyes nervous, and for a brief moment she looked at Victoria like someone waiting for permission. Adrian lowered his voice. What did you say? Mia looked toward the counter again. The cashier knows her from yesterday. Adrian studied Mia's face. He had seen many people try to manipulate situations around him. He knew what fear looked like. He knew what performance looked like. But Mia did not look like someone trying to create trouble. She looked like someone trying to stop it. Victoria turned toward them with a gentle expression. Mia, sweetheart, maybe you misunderstood something. Her voice was warm enough that several people nearby relaxed. Children sometimes notice pieces of things and put them together the wrong way. Mia lowered her eyes for a moment, not because she was afraid, but because she was choosing her words carefully. I might not know everything, she said quietly, but I know what I saw. Adrian looked at Victoria. Then he looked back at the cashier. The woman quickly looked away. That small movement bothered him more than any accusation. Nobody touches anything, Adrian said calmly. The manager froze. Victoria's expression changed for less than a second before returning to normal. Adrian, are you seriously listening to a child over me? She asked. It was a reasonable question. The kind of question that would make most people choose the comfortable answer. Adrian could have ignored Mia. He could have trusted the person standing beside him. He could have let the situation disappear. But something about the moment felt wrong. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just wrong. He looked down at the counter and noticed a small piece of paper partly hidden beneath the scanner. A receipt. Old. Folded. Almost thrown away. Mia pointed toward it. That one was there yesterday too. Adrian slowly picked it up. The date printed at the top was yesterday's date. The time was 7:43 p.m. His eyes moved back to Victoria. You said you have never been here before. For the first time that evening, Victoria did not answer immediately. And Adrian Valenti noticed the silence. Because sometimes the truth does not arrive with a confession. Sometimes it appears in the 1 second when someone forgets what they were supposed to say. Adrian Valenti did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone. He simply held the old receipt between his fingers and watched the people around him reveal what they thought he did not notice. The manager of Valenti Market stepped closer with a polite smile, the kind of smile people used when they wanted a difficult moment to disappear quickly. Mr. Valenti, I am sure there is a simple explanation, he said. Perhaps your fiancé came in yesterday and forgot about it. Adrian looked at him carefully. That is possible, he replied. But that is not what she told me. The manager became quiet. Victoria immediately stepped in. I did not think it was important, she said. I have visited many stores. I do not remember every place I enter. Her explanation sounded reasonable. It was exactly the kind of explanation most people would accept. But Adrian had built his entire world by noticing what did not fit. Mia stood beside Elena, holding her backpack strap with both hands. She did not interrupt. She did not try to prove herself. She simply waited. Adrian looked at her. Mia, tell me exactly what you saw yesterday. The little girl glanced at Elena first. Her mother gave a small nod, reminding her that she did not have to speak if she felt uncomfortable. Mia took a quiet breath. Yesterday, I was waiting near the entrance while my mom finished work, she said. I saw Miss Victoria walk to this register. She did not have a shopping cart. She did not have bags. She talked to the cashier and then went into the office with the manager. The store became unusually quiet. Victoria crossed her arms. A child watching people walk around a store does not mean anything, she said gently. Mia could have mistaken me for someone else. Adrian did not respond immediately. Instead, he looked at the cashier. Is that true? He asked. The cashier looked nervous. She glanced at Victoria, then at Adrian. She started but stopped. The hesitation was enough. Adrian noticed. Everyone noticed. Victoria sighed softly, almost disappointed. This is becoming unfair, she said. You are allowing a child's imagination to damage my reputation. Those words changed something in the room. Not because they were loud, because they were carefully chosen. She was no longer defending herself against Adrian. She was presenting herself as someone being attacked. Adrian recognized that move. He had seen people use sympathy as a shield before, but he still needed proof. Not feelings, not guesses. Proof. Manager, Adrian said calmly. I want the transaction record from yesterday evening. The manager hesitated. Sir, that information is not usually reviewed without a reason. Adrian looked at the receipt again. Now you have one. The manager walked toward the office. Victoria followed him with her eyes for only a moment, but Adrian caught it. She knew exactly what he was going to find. Mia noticed something else. She pointed carefully toward the register screen. The cashier changed something, she whispered. Adrian looked back. What changed? Mia looked at the screen, then at the receipt. Yesterday, that little symbol was not there. Adrian leaned closer. On the receipt was a small blue mark next to the transaction number. It looked meaningless. Most people would ignore it. But Adrian knew systems. Small marks existed for reasons. The manager returned carrying a printed record. Mr. Valenti, the system shows Miss Laurent was here yesterday at 7:43 p.m. Victoria's face remained calm. I already explained that. Adrian nodded. Yes, but you did not explain why the record shows you were not shopping. The manager looked confused. What do you mean? Adrian placed the receipt on the counter. Because according to this, no purchase was completed. A silence fell over the checkout area. Mia looked at the paper. Elena held her breath. Victoria remained still. Then Adrian asked the question nobody expected. If you were not here to buy anything, why did you need the store to remember that you were? Adrian Valenti had learned a long time ago that the most dangerous lies were not the ones that sounded impossible. They were the ones that sounded reasonable. Standing in the middle of Valenti Market, surrounded by customers, employees, and cameras, he watched Victoria Laurent carefully. She was calm, too calm. But Adrian did not make decisions based on suspicion. He made them based on facts. Show me the transaction history, Adrian said. The manager placed the printed record on the counter. The paper showed that Victoria had entered the store the previous evening at 7:43 p.m. It also showed something strange. There was no completed purchase. No payment. No final receipt. Just an unfinished transaction. Adrian tapped the paper lightly. What happens when a customer starts a purchase but does not finish? He asked. The manager answered quickly. Usually nothing. The system keeps the record for a short time. Then it closes. Adrian looked at the blue symbol Mia had noticed. Then why was this one manually saved? The manager stopped. That was the first moment when his confidence disappeared. Victoria noticed it too. Adrian, you are turning a simple store issue into something much bigger than it is, she said. You know me better than this. Her voice was soft, almost hurt. For a moment, everyone watching would have thought Adrian was being unreasonable. That was exactly what Victoria wanted. She wanted the room to see a powerful man questioning a woman who looked innocent. But Adrian looked beyond appearances. I am not asking who is innocent, he said. I am asking who changed the story. Mia watched quietly from beside Elena. She did not understand contracts or business strategies. She did not know why adults used complicated words to hide simple things. But she understood when someone answered a question they were not asked. Adrian turned back to the cashier. What happened yesterday? The young woman swallowed. I was told not to discuss it. The words came out before she could stop them. Everyone heard them. Adrian looked at Victoria. By whom? The cashier looked down. I cannot say. Mia gently pulled Elena's hand. She whispered something. Elena looked surprised. What did she say? Adrian asked.
Elena hesitated.
Mia said the cashier was not afraid yesterday. She was afraid today. Adrian looked at Mia. The little girl lowered her eyes. Yesterday, she looked confused, Mia explained. Today, she looks like she already knows what is going to happen. That sentence stayed in the air. It was not an accusation. It was an observation. Adrian had spent years around people who prepared stories before telling them. He knew the difference between someone remembering an event and someone performing a role. He looked at the manager. Bring me the security access log from yesterday. The manager hesitated again. Sir, that may take some time. Take the time. Adrian's voice remained calm. But bring it. While the manager walked away, Victoria leaned closer. Are you really going to let this continue because of a child's memory? Adrian looked at her. I am going to let the evidence decide. That answer changed the atmosphere. Victoria realized something important. Adrian was no longer trying to protect their relationship. He was investigating the situation. A few minutes later, the manager returned with another document. There is something unusual, he said. The security camera near the checkout area was accessed yesterday. Adrian looked up. By who? The manager stared at the screen. An employee account. Which employee? Adrian asked. The manager hesitated before answering. The store manager account. The room went silent again. The problem was no longer just Victoria. Someone inside the store had helped create the situation. Adrian looked at the camera above the checkout lane, then at the receipt, then at Mia. The little girl had not solved anything. She had simply noticed the first crack in a carefully built wall. And now Adrian knew the wall was hiding something much bigger. Pull the footage, he said. All of it. The manager looked nervous. Sir, there is one more thing. Adrian turned. What? The manager slowly looked at the screen. A section of the recording is missing. The missing footage changed the atmosphere inside Valenti Market. A few minutes earlier, the problem had been a strange receipt and an unfinished transaction. Now everyone understood there was a missing piece of the story. Adrian Valenti stood in front of the checkout counter, looking at the security monitor while the store manager avoided eye contact. How long is the missing section? Adrian asked. The manager cleared his throat. 12 minutes. Adrian looked at him. 12 minutes from what time? The manager checked the record again. From 7:41 p.m. to 7:53 p.m. yesterday. Adrian slowly turned toward Victoria. The timing was too precise. The same period when the system showed she was inside the store, but somehow no purchase was completed. Victoria remained composed. Adrian, you are making assumptions because a computer system has a gap. She smiled slightly. Anyone can make mistakes. Adrian nodded. That is true. Systems make mistakes. People make choices. The difference between those two things was becoming clearer by the second. The manager attempted to explain that the missing footage could have happened because of a technical issue. Adrian did not argue. He simply asked for the system access report. That request made the manager hesitate again. Mr. Valenti, why do you need that? Adrian looked at him. Because someone did not just lose footage. Someone opened the system. The manager slowly printed another page. This time, the room became completely silent when the information appeared. The security footage had not disappeared because of a random error. Someone had logged into the system manually. The account used was not a cashier account. It was the store manager account. Adrian looked at the manager. Did you remove the footage? The man immediately shook his head. No, sir. I would never do that. Adrian studied his reaction. He was not angry. He was measuring every word. Then someone used your access. The manager looked uncomfortable. That is impossible. Mia, standing beside Elena, looked toward the office door. That is the room where she went yesterday, she said quietly. Everyone looked at her. Adrian crouched slightly so he was closer to her height. What room?
Mia pointed carefully.
The office. Victoria went inside with him. She looked at the manager. You were there. The manager's face changed. Just slightly. But Adrian noticed. Mia did not notice because she understood business secrets. She noticed because she remembered faces. She remembered movement. She remembered moments adults thought children ignored. Adrian stood up again. Open the office access record. The manager hesitated. That is private employee information. Adrian looked at him calmly. Then you should have no reason to protect it. The manager opened the record. A list of entries appeared on the screen. One name appeared twice.
Victoria Laurent.
The first entry was yesterday at 7:38 p.m. The second was today, less than 20 minutes before the incident began. Victoria finally stopped pretending everything was simple. I had a conversation with the manager, she admitted. That does not prove anything. Adrian nodded. Correct. It proves only that you were preparing something here before today. He turned toward the cashier. What did she ask you to do? The cashier looked nervous again. She glanced at Victoria, then at Adrian. She asked me to remember a specific story. Adrian said nothing. The cashier continued. She told me if there was a problem at the register today, I should say the items were already different when Mr. Valenti arrived. The customers around them became quiet. Victoria immediately responded. That is a lie. But her voice was no longer as smooth as before. Adrian noticed. He noticed because Mia had taught him something important that evening. The truth was often hidden in the smallest changes. A pause. A look. A sentence that arrived too quickly. Adrian looked at the cashier. Why did you agree? The woman lowered her eyes. I was afraid of losing my job. Elena looked at Mia, and Mia looked back. The little girl understood something painful. Adults sometimes stayed quiet because they needed to survive. Adrian looked at the missing footage record again. He had one more question. Who recorded the scene today? The manager searched the system. Then he stopped. There was a reservation made for a private media crew. Adrian's expression changed. A media crew? The manager nodded slowly. Someone wanted this moment recorded before it happened. Adrian looked toward Victoria. For the first time that night, he did not see a misunderstanding. He saw a plan. But one question remained. If Victoria wanted to create a public story against him, who was waiting to use that story after it was created? The words private media crew changed everything inside Valenti Market. Until that moment, Adrian Valenti had been looking for the person who changed a record, the person who removed a camera file, and the person who convinced employees to stay quiet. Now he understood something bigger. Someone had planned for an audience. Someone wanted the world to see a version of events before anyone could question it. Adrian looked at the manager. Show me the reservation details. The manager opened the system again, this time moving much slower. A few seconds later, another document appeared. It showed a scheduled recording request made 24 hours earlier. The location was the checkout area. The estimated recording time was the exact time Victoria had created the scene. Adrian stared at the screen. So someone knew this would happen before it happened. Nobody answered. Victoria remained silent. That silence told Adrian more than any explanation could. He turned toward her. You did not walk into a problem today. You walked into a performance. Victoria took a slow breath. That is a serious accusation. Adrian nodded. Which is why I need serious evidence. He was not interested in winning an argument in front of strangers. He wanted facts that could survive after everyone left the store. The manager contacted the company that handled the media reservation. Within minutes, they received a confirmation email. The request had been made through a third-party account. Not Victoria's name. Not the store's name. Private company. Mia stood quietly beside Elena, listening to the adults speak. She did not understand every word, but she understood one thing. The room had changed. Earlier, people looked at Adrian as if he was the problem. Now they were watching Victoria. Adrian noticed Mia looking at the screen. What do you see? He asked. Mia stepped closer, but only after Elena nodded. She looked at the email details. Then she pointed to a small line at the bottom. That number was on the paper yesterday. Everyone looked at her. Adrian leaned closer. What number? Mia pointed again. The number on the receipt. The manager checked the receipt from the previous day. Near the bottom was a customer service reference number. It matched the account number attached to the media reservation. The connection was small, almost invisible, but it connected two separate moments. Yesterday's visit. Today's setup. Adrian looked at Mia differently now. Not because she had solved the mystery. She had not. But because she kept finding the first thread every time someone tried to hide the entire picture. Where did you see that number yesterday? Adrian asked.
Mia answered carefully.
On the paper Victoria gave the manager. The manager immediately looked uncomfortable. She gave me a note about a customer concern, he said. Adrian turned toward him. And where is that note? The manager hesitated. I do not know. That answer created another silence. Adrian looked around the store. A document connected to a security change? A missing recording? And a planned public incident disappears? Nobody spoke. Victoria finally stepped forward. Adrian, you are treating every mistake as if it is a conspiracy. Adrian looked at her.
No.
I am treating every coincidence as something that needs an answer. Then his phone received a message from his security team. They had found the original video file from the media reservation system. It had not been deleted. It had been uploaded automatically before the edited version was prepared. Adrian opened the file. The screen showed the checkout area from a different angle. The video had not yet been cut. It showed Victoria entering the store earlier that day. It showed her speaking with someone outside the camera view. It showed the media crew waiting before the incident began. But then the video stopped before revealing who she was speaking with. The file was incomplete. Not enough to end everything. Enough to prove the story was much bigger. Adrian closed the screen. We have the first layer, he said quietly. Now we find the reason. Mia looked up at him. Are we going to know why she did it? Adrian looked at the little girl who had started this with a simple observation. Yes, he said. But first we need to find out who else was expecting me to fail. Adrian Valenti left the checkout area for only a few minutes. But the world around him had already changed. The store was still open. Customers were still walking through the aisles. The checkout scanners were still making the same quiet sounds. But for Adrian, nothing about that evening felt ordinary anymore. He had spent years building a reputation around control. He trusted systems, records, contracts, and information. Yet a small 8-year-old girl with an old backpack had noticed the first crack in a plan designed to look perfect. Inside a private office at the back of Valenti Market, Adrian reviewed every piece of information they had collected. The receipt from yesterday, the missing camera footage, the media reservation, the altered system record. None of it was random. Each piece connected to the next. Elena stood quietly near the door with Mia beside her. She looked uncomfortable being in a room usually reserved for executives and managers. Adrian noticed. Elena, you and Mia can leave if you want, he said. Elena looked surprised. Mr. Valenti, We do not want to interfere. Adrian shook his head. You are not interfering. You are the reason we found the first clue. Mia looked down at her small notebook. I did not find everything, she said softly. Adrian looked at her.
No.
You found the part everyone else ignored. Before Adrian could say more, his security team sent another update. They had traced the third-party media company connected to the planned recording. The company itself was legitimate. It created promotional videos for businesses and public figures. But the payment history showed something unusual. The money did not come directly from Victoria. It came through a consulting company with a hidden connection to a larger investment group. Adrian recognized the name immediately. His expression changed. Not with anger, with understanding. The investment group had been trying to gain influence over his company for months. They had approached him with partnership offers. They had praised his leadership publicly. And now they were connected to a plan designed to make him look unstable. This was never about one store, Adrian said quietly. Victoria looked away. That reaction answered more than words could. She had known. Maybe not every detail. Maybe not every person involved. But she knew enough. Adrian asked his team to pull the legal documents connected to the investment group. Within minutes, another file appeared. It was a draft agreement. A plan for a leadership transition if Adrian faced a public reputation crisis. The language was carefully written. It did not say they wanted to destroy him. It said they wanted to create conditions where others would question whether he should remain in control. Mia looked at the document without understanding the business language. They wanted people to believe something that was not true, she said. Adrian looked at her. Yes. Mia held her notebook tighter. Why would someone do that? Adrian paused. It was a simple question. A child's question. But it carried more truth than many adult conversations he had heard. Because sometimes people do not want what you have, Adrian answered. Sometimes they want the right to decide who gets to keep it. The room became quiet. For the first time, Adrian understood that this was not just about protecting his company. It was about something deeper. The people behind the plan believed they could control the story because they controlled the information. They counted on employees staying silent. They counted on customers believing the first version they saw. They counted on nobody paying attention to the small details. They never counted on Mia. Adrian looked again at the original receipt. It was still just a small piece of paper. But now he understood its importance. It was not powerful because it proved everything. It was powerful because it started the chain that exposed everything. His phone received one more message. The legal team had found another document connected to Victoria. A contract prepared weeks earlier. A contract that would give her temporary authority over Adrian's assets if he lost public support. Adrian read the first page silently. Then he looked up. Victoria finally spoke. Adrian, you need to understand something. He looked at her. What? Her voice was quieter now. You were never supposed to find out this way. Adrian placed the document on the table. The words stayed between them. She had not expected him to discover the plan. But the bigger question was still unanswered. Who had convinced her that betraying Adrian was the only way forward? Adrian Valenti had spent most of his life believing that power meant never being surprised. Every meeting had an agenda. Every contract had a purpose. Every person around him had a reason for being there. But that night, inside the private office of Valenti Market, Adrian realized something uncomfortable. The people closest to power were sometimes the ones who knew exactly how to hide the truth. He looked at the contract connected to Victoria Laurent. It was not a simple agreement. It was a carefully prepared document designed to make her appear responsible and reliable if Adrian faced a public crisis. The language was professional. The signatures were real. The plan was hidden behind words like stability, transition, and protection. But Adrian understood what it meant. Someone had been preparing for a future without him making the decisions. Victoria watched him silently. For the first time, the confidence she carried all evening was gone. Adrian placed the document on the table. How long? He asked. Victoria did not answer immediately. How long did you know about this? Adrian asked again. She looked away. That small movement confirmed something he already suspected. She was not surprised by the discovery. She was surprised by how quickly he found it. I never wanted things to become this complicated, Victoria finally said. Adrian studied her carefully. That is not an answer. Before Victoria could respond, Adrian received another message. His team had discovered a connection between the consulting company and someone inside his own organization. It was not a stranger. It was someone who had attended his meetings, reviewed his plans, and publicly supported his decisions. Adrian read the name twice. Then he closed his eyes for a moment. The betrayal was not emotional anymore. It was structural. Someone had used his own system against him. Elena noticed the change in his expression. Mr. Valenti, what happens now? She asked quietly. Adrian looked toward Mia. The little girl was sitting in a chair that was much too large for her, holding her notebook. She had spent the entire evening watching adults create complicated explanations for simple actions. Now, Adrian said, we stop guessing. He did something unexpected. He did not call his security team to remove Victoria. He did not make a public announcement. He did not make a decision based on anger. Instead, he asked his team to collect every piece of information connected to the plan. Dates, messages, payments, meetings, records, everything. Mia watched him carefully. You are still looking for proof, she said. Adrian nodded. Because being right is not enough. You have to be able to show people the truth. That answer stayed with Mia. She opened her notebook and looked at the pages she had filled with small observations. Time, place, person, a detail. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that looked important. But together they created a picture. Adrian noticed the notebook. May I see it? Mia hesitated, then handed it to him. Inside were simple notes written in a child's handwriting. White bag. Blue mark on paper. Lady talked to man in office. Same people came back today. Adrian read every line carefully. He realized something important. Mia did not think like an investigator. She thought like someone trying to understand the world around her. She noticed because she had no reason to assume anything was unimportant. Adults often ignored small things because they believed they already understood the bigger picture. Mia never made that mistake. Adrian returned the notebook. You know what you did tonight? He asked. Mia shook her head. You reminded me that information is not the same as understanding. For the first time that evening, Adrian's voice became softer. Not because he felt sorry for himself. Because he respected the person who had helped him see what he missed. Then his phone received one final update. The investigation team had found the missing connection. The person who approved the hidden agreement was not outside his company. It was someone from his own family office. Someone who had access to private records. Someone who had been near him the entire time. Adrian looked at the message. The room became silent. The problem was no longer just Victoria. The problem was the system around him. And now Adrian had a choice. He could protect the reputation of his empire, or he could expose the people who had been using it for their own plans. He looked at Mia's small notebook one more time. The first clue had come from the person everyone expected to ignore. Now the truth would have to come from the person everyone expected to stay silent. The next morning, Valenti Market opened as usual. Customers walked through the aisles, employees arranged products, and the checkout lanes moved at the same steady rhythm as any other day. But behind the ordinary appearance, Adrian Valenti was preparing for a moment that would change everything. He had one rule when dealing with people who created lies. He never confronted the lie where it was strongest. He waited until the truth had enough evidence to stand on its own. That was why Adrian returned to the same checkout area where everything had started. The same counter, the same cameras, the same place where Victoria Laurent believed she had already controlled the story. Victoria arrived with confidence, but something was different. She no longer looked like someone defending herself. She looked like someone waiting to see how much Adrian knew. Around them were the people connected to the situation. The store manager, the cashier. Adrian's legal team, his security specialists, and Mia, standing beside Elena with her small purple backpack and her notebook in her hands. Adrian did not bring Mia there to prove a point. He brought her because she was part of the truth from the beginning. The manager looked uncomfortable as Adrian placed the first piece of evidence on the counter. The old receipt. This was the first thing everyone ignored, Adrian said. A simple piece of paper. Then he placed the security report beside it. This showed someone changed the system. Then the email records. This showed the event was planned before it happened. Then the contract. And this showed the reason behind it. The people watching slowly understood that the checkout problem was never about a bag of items. It was about creating a story where Adrian looked guilty before anyone asked questions. Victoria remained silent. Adrian turned toward her. You had every opportunity to tell the truth. Victoria looked at him. And if I had? Adrian answered calmly. Then we would not be standing here. For a moment, nobody spoke. The cashier finally stepped forward. I am sorry, she said quietly. I should have said something sooner. Adrian looked at her. Why did you not? She looked down. Because I thought nobody would believe me. Mia heard those words and looked at Elena. She understood them. Sometimes people did not stay quiet because they wanted to hide the truth. Sometimes they stayed quiet because they believed their voice did not matter. Adrian looked around the store. That was the part he wanted everyone to understand. The problem was not only Victoria. The problem was the environment that allowed a lie to grow. A person with money and influence could create a story quickly. But people without power needed someone willing to listen. Victoria finally spoke. You are making me look like a villain because of a few documents. Adrian shook his head. No. The documents are making the decision. I am only showing them. That sentence changed the entire room. Adrian was not using his reputation to win. He was using evidence to let everyone decide. The store manager admitted that he allowed the system changes because he believed Victoria had enough influence to protect him. The media company confirmed that the original recording was prepared to create a misleading impression. The investment group connected to the agreement was reported to the appropriate authorities and business regulators for review. No threats. No revenge. Just accountability. Then Adrian turned toward Mia. There is one more thing everyone needs to hear. Mia looked surprised. Adrian continued. This girl was the first person who noticed something was wrong. Not because she had power. Not because people listened to her. Because she paid attention. The customers who had looked at Mia with doubt earlier now looked at her differently. Not as the child who interrupted adults. As the person who gave everyone a chance to see the truth. Elena placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. Her eyes filled with emotion, but she smiled. For years, she had worried that being invisible was the price of survival. Now her daughter had shown everyone that being unseen did not mean being unimportant. Adrian looked at Victoria one last time. The truth did not hurt you, he said. The truth simply removed the protection that allowed the lie to survive. Victoria had no answer, because for the first time she was not facing an argument. She was facing a record of her own choices, and standing in the same place where she planned to control the story, she finally realized something. The smallest voice in the room had become the one voice nobody could ignore. After everything was revealed inside Valenti Market, the store slowly returned to normal. Customers left with a different understanding of what had happened. Employees returned to their work, but the feeling inside the building had changed. The place where people once judged too quickly had become the place where the truth finally had room to speak. Adrian Valenti stood near the same checkout counter where the entire situation began. The receipt was no longer just a piece of paper. The missing footage was no longer just a technical issue. The contract was no longer just a business document. Together, they told a story that could not be rewritten. In the days that followed, the investigation continued through proper legal channels. The companies involved in creating the false narrative were reviewed. The people who helped manipulate records had to answer for their choices. Victoria Laurent lost her position, not because Adrian used his influence to punish her, but because the evidence showed she had broken the trust that came with that position. The agreement she had prepared was cancelled. The plans created behind closed doors were no longer hidden. For the first time in a long time, Adrian did not solve a problem by controlling every outcome. He solved it by allowing the truth to stand on its own. Elena Johnson was still the same person she had always been. She was still kind, still hard-working, still someone who had spent years making sure others were comfortable before thinking about herself. But something had changed. People no longer looked at her as simply an employee in Adrian's home. They saw the person who had raised the child who noticed what everyone else missed. Adrian made sure Elena received a formal opportunity to advance her career and choose her own path. Not because he felt sorry for her, but because he finally recognized the value she had always carried. Mia's life changed too, but not in the way people expected. She did not become famous. She did not suddenly act like an adult. She was still an 8-year-old girl who liked writing notes, asking questions, and paying attention to small details. Adrian never asked her to become someone else. Instead, he made sure she had what every child deserved: safety, education, support, a chance to grow without feeling invisible. One afternoon, Adrian found Mia sitting at a table, writing in her notebook. He looked at the familiar purple cover and smiled. "Are you writing down another mystery?" he asked. Mia looked up. "No," she said. "I am writing things I do not want to forget." Adrian sat across from her. "What do you not want to forget?" Mia thought for a moment. Then she answered, "That people can miss important things when they only look at what is big." Adrian smiled because he knew exactly what she meant. He had spent years surrounded by powerful people who focused on numbers, titles, and appearances. But the truth that saved him came from someone who simply paid attention. Later, Adrian returned the original receipt to Mia. Not because it was valuable. It was still just a small piece of paper. But because it represented the moment when someone who was usually ignored changed the direction of an entire story. "Keep it," Adrian said. "Why?" Mia asked. Adrian looked at the receipt and then at her. "Because it reminds people that truth does not always arrive from the person with the loudest voice." Mia placed the receipt carefully inside her notebook. Months later, when people talked about what happened at Valenti Market, they did not remember the arguments or the rumors. They remembered the lesson. They remembered that a person's importance was not measured by their money, their position, or the clothes they wore. They remembered that a little girl who was expected to stay quiet had the courage to speak when something felt wrong. And Adrian Valenti remembered something even more important. Power was not about making sure everyone listened to you. Real power was being willing to listen when the smallest voice in the room was the one telling